Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the topic in the era of digitalization. Agent dialogue strategy is a key success factor. So today, I, Fredrik Lemming, will present this. I work as a sales director at Telia, together with my colleague Beata Nylén. She will later introduce herself. So what we will cover today is, first of all, the agent dialogue that we are using at Telia. And we'll just give you a short introduction to it for you to have an understanding how it's working, what it's based on, because then later in the presentation, we are going to talk about how we are doing the follow-up and securing and making sure that we're using the agent dialogue and also the effects about dialogue. But first, I'm going to give you a short introduction to what Telia is all about. So Telia is a telco as Deutsche Telekom. We are the incumbent telco in the Nordic and the Baltics. Head office in Stockholm and roughly 20,000 employees. We have a B2B and a B2C business. And also have a global footprint with our carrier business. And of course, we are engaging in a big customer service operation, roughly more than 4,000 agents. So what I will talk about today is the customer service operation in Sweden. And this is the 10-year trend that we have seen in Sweden, just to give you a backdrop to why we are, among other things, using agent dialogues, is that we have had a reduction in number of calls. It has been a reduction of almost 30%. And the reasons for that is that customers are using more self-service today than previously, and also customers know more. 10 years ago, routers were new things. There were the new kids on the block. So when you had a problem, you called into support, and then they told you to restart the router. And 95% in all cases, it fixed the problem. And then when you've done that sort of a couple of times, you don't call back again. You try it yourself. So hence, you know more. And then, of course, routers today are not failing as often as they were failing previously. So our products and services has improved. So from this one-dimensional perspective, you can assume that we have reduced the number of agents with 30%, but it couldn't be more wrong, because you need to pair the number of interaction with the average handling time for each and every interaction, and that kind of builds up the total handling time or production area. And this is what it looks like. So basically today we are spending more time with customers than we did 10 years ago, and the reason behind that is that customer solutions are more complex for us. It's not just one router anymore. It's not just one subscription. It's many, and there's triple play and other bundle offers from a telco. And that's exactly what we like. We want customers to use more of our service and also in combination. Customers are using more self-service services, hence simple questions are fewer, which leaves us with the more complex ones. And with more complex inquiries, that builds up the average handling time. And we are foreseeing in the future that we are facing a more complex future. And that means that we need to really work on the strategies in order to deal with complex tasks when interacting with customers. So this is the backdrop to why we are engaging in different AI activities, and one of our strategies is to keep customer online. We want them to be there and want them to fix the problems themselves. And we also need to guide them there when they are entering up in our customer service operation. So we set up on this quest to have Sweden's best customer engagement or customer experience. And for us, it's very important to define what is this. It's very easy to say, and we have stated this in a three-pillar approach. It's about that customer clearly confirms that the inquiry is solved. We want them to state that after each and every interaction, and that needs to be in combination with that the customers clearly states that they are happy with the interaction. And finally, we also want customers to clearly state they understands the different alternatives that they can use in when engaging with us. But in order to reach this, we need to have a strategy, and also we need to have an agent or customer dialogue in place. So this is on a high level our customer dialogue. It's based on behavioral science, and I guess this is what everyone is talking about. And from a behavior science perspective, we have done some research, and companies has helped us, and it's based on the needs of the customer. How do customers and individuals and human beings make decisions, and how do we work? And when we understand that, we could apply different sort of methods to that sort of knowledge. And of course, those methods, we want to support sort of the needs that we identified within the behavioral science. But methods is not good enough. We need to apply a layer of strategies as well that drives the customer and us to the purpose of the interaction or what they are trying to focus on. And an important part of this is to identify the methods. And I'm going to share with you today the 3 best methods that we are using in our customer service operation. And number 1, it's called POF in Swedish. Well, in English, it's abbreviated with POR, which is not really what it stands for. It's reinforcement. And what do we mean by positive reinforcement? We mean that the positive reinforcement is that we could sort of create trust and support customer in making decisions. And it's very important that we have a positive tonality when we are engaging with them. So typically, we are saying to customers, good that you contacted us, that's a very good question, and stuff like that. And that is very crucial, and you will see it later in the dialogue. And number 2, 7 plus minus 2. What does that stand for? Well, this is a reminder for us, and we will shortly watch a movie, and hopefully you will be able to listen to the sound, but it's subtitled. And it's the limitations of human beings that we cannot sort of compute more than a number of different things at the same time, and especially if you are new to a domain or a subject. And this is often a challenge. While you're working in a customer service operation, you are dealing with many interactions each and every day, and most of them are the same. But for the customers that are calling in, it's maybe the first time they are having questions around this topic. So you have an information overhand, so to say, when you are engaging. And this is illustrated by this movie. So let's have a look at it.
Först tar den grå fjärrkontrollen och trycker på den röda knappen.
Röd knapp,
Sen
ja.
trycker på AV-knappen.
På samma sätt.
Sen tar den samma svarta kontrollen och trycker på den blå knappen. Och sen om Chromecasten är inkopplad, då tar den grå kontrollen igen och sen trycker du på den gröna knappen. Okej? Okej, först tar du den grå fjärrkontrollen och trycker på den röda knappen.
Ja.
Du? Ja, sen trycker du på AV-knappen.
På samma?
Ja.
Ja.
Sen tar du den svarta kontrollen och trycker på den blå knappen.
Svart och blå, bra.
Hittar du? Ja.
Ja, ja.
Och sen så är om Chromecasten inkopplad så får du trycka på den grå kontrollen igen. Hittar du?
Ja, på
Ja, då trycker du på den
Chromecast-knappen.
gröna knappen.
Och gröna?
Ja.
Ja. Ja, nu funkar det.
Ja, vad bra.
Ja.
So this is what we are meaning by 7 plus minus 2. And we need to constantly remind ourselves, because this sometimes could be a challenge with the KPIs that we are applying to the agents, where we try to reduce the average handling time. And that sort of drives the behavior from the agent perspective, that we should really push the information that we are conveying to our customers. And that could be a very bad experience. So we need to take this into consideration when we are assessing sort of KPIs and also how we are training agents. And number 3 is achieve. And basically here we have borrowed this method from marriage counseling. So the starting point is trying to look sort of what is positive. And normally when customers called in and wanted to terminate sort of a subscription or something at Telia, the first question we pretty much asked them is, why would you like to terminate this subscription? And then we were kind of questioning the customer. And then the customer ended up in a mode where they really, defended themselves and justified their decision. So already from the start, the guard was up and they were not sort of receptive to changes. So instead, like in marriage counseling, instead of saying that, we said, well, we will fix this. So do you remember why you picked Telia from the very start? And then the customer starts to talk about, you had very good coverage, and your price plans were attractive, or your bundles were very appealing, and you had stable service and stuff like that. And then suddenly you have a completely different starting point trying to do this anti-churn work with the customer, and it's been very successful. And we will look at the results at the end of this session. So this is all boiled down into our customer dialogue structure, and this is what it looks like. It's 6 steps, and it's in 2 dimensions: what we do in the dialogue, and examples of how we should do it in terms of responses. And just to have a short run through the dialogue, this is what it looks like. The first step is first impression, and welcome phrase: hi, welcome to Telia, you are talking to, what can I do for you? This is a standard and should be the first opening line in every interaction. And then it's customer inquiry, and you can see different examples of questions around the customer inquiry, how to understand what their inquiry is all about, and then the need analysis. And here are some topics about different suggestions about different sentences that we can use and phrases. And then it moves on to the presentation. So now we have understood what it's all about, and then we are presenting the offer or our solution to the customer. And then, of course, there will be a session when customers need to take a decision, and it's close and objections. And it could be to handle objections from customers, or to just continue with the signing of the contract. And then at the end, the last impression session. So, and as you can see, it's a lot of specific phrases that we are using, and we have divided them into 4 different categories. And it's the positive ones, and it sort of ties back to the positive reinforcement. And it's about sort of what can we do for you, the benefits with this is, what is possible, and stuff like that. And then we need to keep in mind about definitions. And we need to explain, what do we mean by slow? What do we mean by expensive? What do we mean by tricky? What do we mean by easy? So understand to have the same view of this as the customer, because something, as within the case of 7 ± 2, could be very easy for us, but extremely tricky for a customer, and vice versa. And then there are 2 red blocks. It's about negative phrases: unfortunately, not until, don't know, cannot. And uncertainty, hopefully, probably, and maybe. And we are working with this. So stop talking to customers about bundling when the customer wants us to reduce the price. Instead of saying, I cannot do that for you, instead we are saying, what is possible for me to do in this case is this. And that can see as maybe not a game changer, but in the end, it does make a big difference. So on the screen now, we have 2 numbers, 90% and 10%. And now is the time when I will do the handover to my colleague Beata. And I think she will start to introduce herself before she will talk about this number. So Beata, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Fredrik. Beata, shortly I'm a manager, and I worked with Telia in following up and measure the effects of the dialogue that they implemented. And first start by explaining the numbers that you have in front of you. So 90% is the number that we got when we asked the coaches, how many of your agents or co-workers do use the dialogues in their interactions? Yes, 90% they said. And when we started to measure exactly how many were using, we saw that only in 10% of the cases were the dialogue used. So moving from what we call a gut feeling to facts is a major step and a key success factor in the rollout of a dialogue strategy. The tool that we used to follow up on the Telia Dialog it's called Interaction Analytics, and it is a tool with many different functionality and components, and I will only mention a few ways. And what you see ahead of you is sort of the main or the base functionality, and within the tool we have an advanced speech recognition which makes it possible to view and see, as you do here, a word cloud of what has been said in every interaction within the customer service, whether it is recorded calls, chats, or emails. The tool also contains a sentiment score, which is based on the interaction and what words and phrases that are used, are the positive or the negative. And this is a tool where you can deep dive by clicking on words that you spot to further understand the root cause for the word that you see. Fredrik mentioned at the beginning, we are still handling long calls. The number of calls do decrease, but they become longer and longer due to the complexity of the call. And it's for the Swedish market, it's not unusual that still 80% of all the interactions within a contact center is still based on human-human dialogue. And we need to work on those strategies and being able to follow up and measure the effects of them. And within this tool, we have quality management, and that is the basic tool when it comes to dialogues, because dialogue is actually a question of being able to follow up and coach on the individuals, on the co-workers within your team or within your contact center. So what you have within the tool is that you have forms or evaluation forms for how they performed within a certain interaction. You have a whole coaching methodology within the tool. That is, if you score low, you will have a coaching session with the appropriate co-workers, not everyone. You can build in workflows and you can follow up through dashboards and reporting, and I will show you a few of those. And what is also important to keep in mind that you do not want to measure the effects of your dialogue necessarily in this tool. I mean, does it increase sale? Does it increase your customer experience? Yes, you should measure that. But here it's also very important to measure that you have set up a strategy. These are the steps to achieve it. Do your agents do what you are telling them to do? So in order to be able to measure and use the advanced speech technology within the tool, you build queries, which is a combination of words and phrases that you are interested in automatically spot within your calls. This is a Swedish example, but here you can have words and phrases just like Fredrik described them in the dialogue. They are very easy to spot and they are long. So for instance, hi and welcome to Telia, my name is, and good and great that you are calling us, excellent to build queries. And with these queries you can do historic analysis, look further back in time, what has been said, what has been done. You can do trend analysis on incoming calls, and you can work with your evaluation forms. That is, what is the agent doing within your interaction? And here is an example actually from Telia, who is using evaluations form to follow up on the dialogue. And never mind, I know it's a small text, but what I'm trying to show in this picture is that the first two questions, whether the agent used the correct welcome phrase and whether the agent sort of led into the correct analysis, next step into the call, they are filled out totally automatically by using speech recognition. And now you can measure 100% of your interaction instead of the gut feeling from your coaches that won't give you the truth. And you can use the evaluation form. The rest of the questions in this evaluation forms, they are manually asked by the coach. So you can do a combination of autofill and manually filling of the evaluation form. So once you have your evaluation forms, so what does it show when you do an evaluation of 100% of your interactions? So what we can see here is for a period of time, approximately 70% of all dialogues contained a correct greeting. And we can also see that only, I would say, 40% of the calls contained a correct lead into the rest of the call. And as you can see in week 39, we had an increase, which is based on coaching on individuals. And this is a score that you can get across your entire contact center within a team. So it's easy to spot those individuals that do need your attention as a coach to be able to perform on your dialogue. As I mentioned also at the beginning, one of the most time-consuming activities for coaches is actually to pick calls, to evaluate, and to maybe do collaboration. So here you can automate your entire workflow from picking calls, applying a search and evaluation form, sending them to quality manager and whatever. So everything can be automated within this tool. So when you have a tool like this and you do follow up on your colleagues, what is one of the most common questions that I get is, of course, how do the co-workers in the contact center respond? And here you will listen to some of our co-workers and how they responded on the dialogue.
Jag tycker det är jättebra med dialogen just för att man får ett redskap som man har stor användning för när man talar med kunderna.
Det är ett bättre kundmötande.
För mig som jobbar här så är det ganska skönt att liksom veta att jag har det som ett stöd när jag ska hjälpa kunderna med deras ärenden, helt enkelt.
Det är lättare att bemöta upprörda kunder.
Det är öppningsfrasen där.
Det är lätt att förstå vad den andra vill och sen så brukar jag använda den för mina föräldrar för att få min egen vilja igenom. Så jag ställer en massa motfrågor hela tiden.
Exactly. So what they are saying is that the dialogue gives them support in handling the customers. The tool actually makes their performance visible to the coaches. They are not coached just on one call, but on all their calls. And obviously, having a dialogue based on behavioral science, as the last girl is saying, it also helps her talking to her parents and getting her will through. When you implement, of course, you don't do it just for fun. You do want to see your effects. And from Telia, we soon could measure some effects from the dialogue. And one of the goals was, of course, to increase sales. And that was done by 33%. One other typical goal, I would say, is to enhance the customer experience. And from the survey that was made after each interaction, we did increase the customer experience. And the last one is, of course, to still be efficient. And as Fredrik said at the beginning, we saw an increase of average handle time. Now, when we have implemented the dialogue, it stays the same, it doesn't increase. So the next step, of course, will be to sort of see if it's possible to also decrease average handle time within our calls. So, Fredrik, the summary of what we are trying to say today is, of course, that implementing a customer dialogue and a tool with it do pays off, as we can see in the effects.
Yes, of course, and I mean, hopefully as we have presented to you, it's a powerful tool. But the old way of doing it, the follow-up, is the manual labor. And that is time consuming, and as we have shown here, and I think you understand it as well, it has maybe not little relevance, but limited relevance. And of course, the best thing is to look into all of the interactions, and then suddenly you could sort of make decision based on not gut feeling, but based on facts. So is sales going up because we have changed and doing in one way, or has sales gone down to other reasons? And that is important for us to understand, because that could drive different initiatives in different ways. And I think sort of that the AI tools that are around, they are needed to get 100% relevance, because we are saturated with data points.
Yes.
And there is no way that we with manual labor can really dig into them, all of them. So I was thinking, one interesting thing is that we trained a chatbot, and with all the interactions, and this chatbot was trained by machine learning, so there was no human intervention. And there was one interesting findings from the training session.
Yeah, exactly, because the dialogue is also implemented in our chat conversations, and we sort of machine trained a chatbot with 30,000 chat conversations. And one of the things and the machine learning bot was actually the positive reinforcement. So you can see that the chatbot started to say, good that you contacted us, great that you contacted us. And that was really fun to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that means that we are executing on the strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, and last but not least, I think it goes with all initiatives that has to do with change management. You need to have management on board. And one of the things that we did is that top management within Telia Sweden organization, up to the CEO of Telia, they were forced to, or not forced, it was compulsory for them to participate in the first step of this dialogue training session. So they really understood what it was all about. That brought awareness and also attention to this program. And with that, we say thank you and open up for questions.
Yes, Fredrik, thank you. So first, I have a quick look if I have already in place, and I think I have.